The phone rang at 3:14 in the morning. Michael Torres had learned, in the 3 years since his divorce, that nothing good ever came from a call at that hour. He lay in the dark for one full ring, staring at the ceiling of his small apartment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. Before he reached over and answered it, the voice on the other end was calm in that practiced way that only hospital staff could manage. A kind of emotional flatness, trained to deliver terrible news without collapsing under the weight of it. Mr. Torres? This is Dr. Anand calling from Mercy General. Sarah Torres is your emergency contact. She's been in a serious accident. She's in surgery right now, and you're listed as her last hope for consent. You need to come in. Michael was already sitting up, already pulling on his jeans in the dark, already reaching for his keys before the doctor had finished speaking. He did not stop to think about the divorce papers, or the arguments, or the quiet, hollow years that had led them both to separate corners of the same city. He just moved, because somewhere deep in the part of him that divorce cannot touch. Sarah was still Sarah. He drove through empty streets, the city asleep around him, traffic lights blinking yellow in the hour before dawn. He played no music. He did not call anyone. He sat with the silence and the fear and the strange, unexpected clarity that comes when something truly important cuts through all the noise of ordinary life. At the hospital, a nurse led him through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and overnight coffee to a waiting room with hard plastic chairs and a television murmuring in the corner. Dr. Anand met him there, a small woman with tired eyes who shook his hand and explained what had happened. A car running a red light, the passenger side. Internal bleeding. Surgery was underway and going as well as could be expected. They needed him there in case decisions had to be made. Michael nodded through all of it, his hands folded in his lap, his jaw tight. He asked the only question that mattered. Is she going to make it? The doctor's answer was careful and honest. We're doing everything we can. It was not the answer he wanted, but it was the truth, and he respected it. He sat alone in that waiting room for 4.5 hours. He drank bad coffee from a vending machine and watched the sky outside the window slowly shift from black to deep blue to the pale, hesitant gray of early morning. He thought about the first time he ever saw Sarah, 22 years old and laughing at something her friends said at a party neither of them had really wanted to attend. He thought about their wedding in the small garden behind her parents' house, and the way she had cried at the vows, not because she was sad, but because she always cried when something mattered too much for words. He thought about their daughter Emma, who was 9 years old and asleep right now at her grandmother's house, unaware that her mother was on an operating table 2 miles away. He thought about all the ways he and Sarah had failed each other, slowly and without malice. The way most marriages end, not in fire but in a long, quiet cooling. And he thought about how none of that, not a single argument or disappointment or lonely evening, had prepared him for the feeling of sitting in this chair waiting to find out if she would live. When Dr. Anand came back through the door, her expression had changed. Something in her shoulders had softened. She's out of surgery, she said. She's stable. It was close, but she's going to be okay. Michael put his face in his hands and did not say anything for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet, and he did not apologize for it. "Can I see her?" he asked. "She's in recovery," the doctor said. "Give it an hour, and then yes." He nodded and leaned back in the plastic chair and closed his eyes and breathed. He stayed for 2 more hours, until a nurse brought him to the recovery room, and he saw Sarah lying there, pale and still, tubes and monitors keeping quiet record of her persistence. She looked smaller than he remembered, fragile in a way she never was when she was awake, because Sarah in motion was one of the most capable people he had ever known. He pulled a chair to her bedside and sat down without touching her and said, very quietly, "Hey, I'm here." She was discharged after 9 days. Her left arm was in a cast, 3 ribs were cracked, and she moved slowly and with effort. Her apartment was a third-floor walk-up with no elevator, and when she mentioned this to her doctor with a kind of exhausted humour, Michael heard himself say before he could think better of it, "She can stay with me." Sarah looked at him from the hospital bed. "Michael, it's just practical," he said, with the careful neutrality of a man trying not to betray how much he meant it. "Emma's already there half the week. It makes sense. You can have the bedroom. I'll take the couch." There was a long pause. Then Sarah said, "Okay, thank you." Those 3 words rearranged something in his chest that he hadn't known was out of place. He helped her home that afternoon with 2 bags of clothes and a small plant she'd asked a friend to bring from her apartment. He made her tea and did not make a production of it. He set it on the nightstand and went back to the couch and read until he fell asleep. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way that surprised them both. Emma came home from school and found her mother on the couch doing a crossword puzzle and treated the whole arrangement as entirely natural because children have a gift for accepting what is. Michael cooked dinner in the evenings, nothing elaborate. Pasta and soup and the lemon chicken that Sarah had always liked. She sat at the kitchen table while he cooked and they talked. First about practical things, Emma's homework and doctor's appointments, and then gradually about other things, memories and small regrets and the specific texture of who they had both become in the 3 years apart. They did not talk about the divorce directly. There was no argument to revisit, no wound to press. There was only 2 people sitting in a kitchen, talking the way they used to, before they had forgotten how. One evening, 3 weeks in, Sarah stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him wash the dishes and said, "I never stopped caring about you, you know. I just didn't know how to reach you anymore." He turned off the tap and stood still for a moment, looking at the window above the sink. "I know," he said. "I think I stopped letting you." It was not a resolution. It was not a promise or a declaration. It was simply the truth, spoken quietly between 2 people who had finally stopped being afraid of it. He turned around and looked at her and she looked back, and something that had been frozen between them for 3 years shifted, just slightly, like ice beginning to give way in early spring. He did not know what would happen next. He did not think either of them did. But for the first time in a long time, he was not afraid of not knowing. Recovery is slow. Forgiveness is slower. But love, the real kind, the kind that survives loss and silence and years of growing separately, does not require the right moment. It only requires the willingness to begin again, one quiet evening at a time, one cup of tea, one honest word, one choice to stay. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories, where every story is a reminder that love, forgiveness, and second chances are always possible.